Hey, how you doing? This is Adam Post, publisher of more than 1,000 comic books and marketing expert covering DEI companies in a panic. Trump's DOJ targets DEI in criminal investigations of woke companies. Let's get into the story. Before we do, please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications. Give me a thumbs up. I really appreciate you guys. The time has come. Trump is president, and he has coordinated with his new Attorney General to start criminal investigations almost immediately of woke company targets. Trump's Justice Department is taking until March 1st, 2025 to identify the first targets for criminal investigation. And the left, the criminals in this case, the people that are discriminating against people because of their sex, their race, their immutable characteristics, have absolutely lost their mind. The DOJ, under new Attorney General Pam Bondi, is ramping up efforts to investigate and prosecute DEI practices in the private sector. This is public companies, this is private companies. This aggressive stance follows President Trump's executive order targeting diversity initiatives, causing widespread concern among companies. The DOJ memo calls for detailed reports on discriminatory DEI practices, including potential criminal investigations. The administration claims DEI programs themselves are discriminatory, which of course they are. We already established this with the Supreme Court ruling in 2023 against affirmative action admissions. The Trump administration plans to eliminate these programs from both private businesses and federally funded institutions. Legal experts note that companies are hastily reviewing their diversity policies to avoid becoming targets of DOJ investigations. There are still companies that may hold out until the last minute, like a company like Costco or Apple, pushing their diversity programs. When they get the letter from the Department of Justice, they will back down. The DOJ memo emphasizes their intent to use civil and criminal measures, signaling a dramatic escalation in enforcement. When a company gets criminal penalties, they don't tend to send people to jail. It's just a matter of how they get justice for the American people. It's fines. The companies are forced to pay and also forced to change illegal practices and procedures. DEI professionals argue that the administration is creating problems where none exist, labeling the crackdown as unjust and overreaching. Can you imagine there are still some people running around saying, yeah, I'm a DEI professional. A lot of them can't get paid work anymore, but it's really painting themselves as a target now. They might find themselves with their own letter from the DOJ. Businesses are under pressure, not just from the DOJ, but also from potential congressional inquiries into their diversity practices. The DOJ's focus includes eliminating training on unconscious bias, which is nonsensical brainwashing, cultural sensitivity, also brainwashing, and inclusive leadership, which is giving people leadership opportunities not based on their leadership qualities, but based on their skin color or sexual preference. The DOJ crackdown is aligned with Project 2025, a conservative blueprint advising the government to aggressively dismantle DEI programs across the board. From Bloomberg Law, DOJ hunt for criminal prosecution of DEI unnerves companies. And from Slate, and boy is Slate upset, Pam Bondi instructs Trump DOJ to criminally investigate companies that do DEI. And from Truth Out, Trump administration plans criminal investigations into corporate DEI programs. The Attorney General's directive sparks concerns over the Trump administration's impact on civil rights protections, as if discriminating against people is a civil rights protection. No, it is not. It's a violation of civil rights. This has already been resolved by the Supreme Court. But if you need a letter from the Department of Justice letting you know you're a criminal target to figure that out, I'm sure this new DOJ will be happy to send you one. And even Disney sees the writing on the wall. From WDW News Today, Reimagine Tomorrow DEI initiative removed from Walt Disney Company corporate filing. The Department of Justice sent a chill through corporate America by signaling its intent to use criminal investigations to root out DEI practices in the private sector. Newly minted Attorney General Pam Bondi's directions follow President Donald Trump's executive order requiring federal agencies to clamp down on companies' diversity, equity, and inclusion policies. Companies and their lawyers are now looking to the DOJ memo to figure out what diversity practices and what language they need to now use as they examine everything from specific initiatives to corporate culture to their public statements. And these companies do actually have to be careful now, because you could get a criminal investigation based on statements that the company puts out in press releases, practices inside the company. For companies that have been doing a lot of this, it's almost going to be impossible to erase all of these things. They will get the letter from the DOJ, especially big companies, so they can make an example out of them. They'll have to pay some kind of a fine, most likely, and they'll be ordered by a court to stop those practices. The specter of a criminal investigation looms large in the Bondi memo, which calls for a report within weeks specifying steps to deter discriminatory DEI practices, including proposals for criminal investigations and up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations. The new administration argues DEI policies and programs are themselves discriminatory. Bondi's memo instructs the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to launch a new mission to investigate, eliminate, and penalize illegal DEI and DEIA preferences, mandates, policies, and activities in the private sector and at educational institutions that receive federal funds. The threat of criminal investigations comes as a slew of large public companies have pulled back from their corporate diversity pledges following conservative attacks that say some DEI efforts place white straight men at a disadvantage. Companies are more worried than they were before the memo because the entire charge is illogical, and the administration is trying to find problems that simply don't exist, according to Vernon Myers, president of the Vernon Myers Company, a DEI consulting firm. Oh, it's completely illogical when you're trying to sell your DEI services, which are actually illegal. Hopefully they go after these ridiculous consulting firms as well. Quote, "At first it was going to be civil, like we were going to come against you, we're going to sue you," said Myers, who worked for Netflix as its first chief diversity officer from 2018 to 2023. Quote, "Now they're talking about criminal, which is criminal." Yes, criminal is criminal. It's a good thing that they have a chief diversity officer that can explain to us that criminal is criminal. And most likely, some of the things that she has done could allegedly be considered criminal. Businesses have been reviewing their diversity policies and statements since the Supreme Court's 2023 decision barring affirmative action in college admissions. They've more recently accelerated internal legal checks of hiring, training, and other initiatives to make sure that they don't become a target of the new administration. But the DOJ order sets off heightened urgency for internal reviews, according to lawyers. As much as people want to criticize Trump, and there are plenty of people that don't like Trump, don't like the administration, he did get the popular vote, and he did kind of win the culture. It's being said that Trump won more of the culture than he did even the popular vote. People kind of agree with what the administration's priorities are now. So companies can't afford the reputational hit of getting into a criminal investigation because they're discriminating against people in what's, for a common sense standpoint, a black and white issue. You can't do things like this. Of course, people feel like everyone should have a chance, but not at the detriment of, well, if you would have had this skin color, we would have hired you, but you actually have that skin color, so we won't hire you. People don't believe in that. They believe everyone should have an equal opportunity, not an equal outcome. That's just what the popular culture is now. And a reputational hit is not just a reputational hit for a company. It's also a financial impact. Do you think Disney really wants to be criminally investigated by Trump's Department of Justice? They couldn't even beat Florida. No, they can't beat the federal government. Especially when most of the country agrees that DEI is inherently wrong and completely un-American. Bondi's order told the Civil Rights Division and the Office of Legal Policy to produce a report with recommendations, quote, for enforcing federal civil rights laws and taking other appropriate measures to encourage the private sector to end illegal discrimination and preferences. The order also signals the potential for the DOJ to intervene in pending cases through amicus briefs, for example, as well as possible regulatory action or guidance. This would mean that the DOJ, which I am pretty sure they will do, will file an amicus brief, basically the opinion of the Department of Justice, to support anyone who's been discriminated against, and many people have, who've actually sued their companies and said, hey, this wasn't fair treatment, you discriminated against me. The Department of Justice and the federal government, the Civil Rights Division, will get involved in that case and tell you what the official opinion of the federal government is. That gives a lot of weight to whoever's doing the suing. A footnote specifies that the memo doesn't prohibit observances such as Black History Month or International Holocaust Remembrance Day or similar events that celebrate diversity, recognize historical contributions, and promote awareness without engaging in exclusion or discrimination. This isn't about the Department of Justice stepping in and ending Black History Month. That's fine. The problem gets down to where you're actually discriminating against people when it comes to their job, when it comes to promotion opportunities, when it comes to hiring. You're not allowed to do that. Or when you're offering special resource groups for only certain skin colors or sexual preferences. The report is due in March 1st, far sooner than the White House's instruction of 120 days or about 4 months. The order instructed the departments to focus on the most egregious and discriminatory DEI and DEIA practitioners. Quote, the AG order and the executive order are tremendously ambitious, said Austin Evers, Associate Deputy Attorney General during the Biden administration and now a partner at Freshfields. While the AG memo mirrors the executive order closely, Evers said the two directives together reflect a level of priority for this initiative that every single company should take note of. What remains unclear is what the DOJ will propose as other strategies to end illegal DEI, lawyers said. A similar memo sent to DOJ employees set to overhaul the department's own DEI practices could offer some insight into what the department will watch, according to one of their lawyers. He points to a line focused on ending diversity training and programs that reference unconscious bias, cultural sensitivity, and inclusive leadership. The memo to employees also asked DOJ staff to identify federal contractors, suppliers, vendors, and grantees who've provided DEI training or DEI training materials to the department since Biden took office. The principles of both the executive order and the DOJ memo were foreshadowed by Project 2025, a document designed to provide governance advice to the next conservative administration. DOJ should lead a whole-of-government commitment to non-discrimination, America First Legal's Foundation co-founder Gene Hamilton wrote in the document. Additionally, the agency should reorganize and refocus its Civil Rights Division, Hamilton wrote. In the administration's first year, DOJ should use the full force of federal prosecutorial resources to investigate and prosecute a host of entities, including corporations and any other private employers who are engaged in discrimination, according to Project 2025. The administration's actions so far track with that advice. Aside from being a potential DOJ target, businesses should also be prepared for Congress to scrutinize DEI programs, according to Andrew Dockham, also a partner at Freshfields, who previously worked as chief counsel for former Senator Rob Portman as part of the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. Quote, Congress likes to call CEOs, that's to call them to talk in front of Congress, that are the heads of household companies. Businesses are now doing deep dives on their policies and practices to determine what could be construed as unlawful or discriminatory, according to Myers. But most will hold the line, she said. This is the consultant who's hoping to sell more services. Her business is over. But here's what she said. Quote, the companies that know how to do this and do this well, they've already had great advice about how to set up their initiatives, she said. These are people who deeply understand that this is part of just running a good, effective company, and it's embedded in all of their work. It's going to be a matter of risk tolerance for most businesses, Evers said. Quote, one thing we've been telling clients is that the need to retain top talent hasn't changed, he said. Their commitments to their workforce have not changed, but their context in which they exist has. Slate really lets you know how hysterical they are over this, because they should be hysterical. Their world is coming to an end. Newly installed Attorney General Pam Bondi sent staff in several divisions of the Department of Justice more than a dozen memos within a 15-minute span, laying out the agency's new policies on issues ranging from reviving the death penalty to targeting sanctuary cities, and to enforcing a strict return to office policy. One astonishing memo seen by Slate puts the DOJ at the center of President Donald Trump's widespread efforts to destroy any traces of initiatives that would create inclusive and diverse workspaces, otherwise known as DEI. The new memo claims that it will target private sector DEI initiatives for potential criminal investigation. It's hard to overstate both the constitutional wreckage this crusade will leave in its wake and the havoc it could wreak on the American workforce. In the name of protecting constitutional rights, Bondi's Justice Department is teeing up an all-out assault on fundamental First Amendment rights to speak, organize, and associate. The memo, headed with the subject line ending illegal DEI and DEIA discrimination and preferences, instructs the Civil Rights Division, historically charged with protecting the rights of vulnerable minorities, and the Office of Legal Policy to take a number of steps to attack any private companies that prioritize diverse workforces through DEIA programs. Bondi has given those departments a March 1st deadline to submit a report with their recommendations to encourage the private sector to end illegal discrimination and preferences, including policies relating to DEI and DEIA. For the people and the companies that have been up to no good over these last few years, pushing illegal programs that they knew they had no legal right to push, there's a new sheriff in town and he's knocking down your door. Let me know what you think of all this in the comments below. Always love to see your ideas. Please be sure you are subscribed to the channel. Click the bell for notifications, give me a thumbs up, and I'll see you again soon with another story. And if I don't see you, I will miss you. And if you want to support the channel and help me make even more videos, subscribe to the channel and become a paid member today.